Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. I'm your host, Thor Conklin. Dylan is here in studio with us today, up on the roof. And Dylan, we've got some questions and answers for our audience. They ask the questions, and we give them the answers. What do we got?
That's right. All right, today we have Shane from Sheridan, Wyoming. And what Shane has, it's actually pretty quick and simple here. And I think it's something that a lot of your clients, Thor, are actually struggling with themselves. Simply, I'm having trouble getting the team to execute. What can I do to increase my team's ability to execute effectively?
Start firing people and beating people.
That'll motivate him.
That'll motivate him. I'm going to get some hate mail in a moment here. No, there's no beating.
And some potential lawsuits in the future.
That's right. Exactly. Against me. No, there are no beatings. You cannot beat your employees anymore. Not a good idea.
Anymore.
Well, you know, I tell the story about when I got hit a couple times working in New York for a lunatic.
That's right.
No, first, no. Let's be clear, no beatings and no firing. But there might have to be some firings. First of all, you need to have the right people. So often I see in organizations where we've built a team to get us from point A to point B, and we're moving to point C, and we just don't have the right team there. It's just not the right people. They don't have the skill sets to do it. Now, on this note, you need to be training your teams constantly. You constantly need to be giving them training, guidance, telling them what to do, how to do it. You've got to give them the resources. It's not fair for you, and this happens all the time. We bring somebody on, we don't give them any training to take the job. Sometimes we give them a little bit of training, but then we don't provide that ongoing training. You've got to provide that ongoing training. If you can't do it in-house, you've got to get them the training. Because, look, finding new employees, bringing new people on is not an easy process, and it's not fair to the people that are there. You've got to train. So I'll get off that soapbox in a second, but you got to have the right people. Second, you've got to have those people in the right seats. So often I see we've got great people, but they're just not suited for the jobs that they're doing currently. Just last week, someone was telling me about a promotion within their organization where they took the top sales guy and they made them the sales manager. That is the stupidest idea ever. You do not want to take a great salesperson and put him in management overseeing other salespeople. They hate that. They may not even, chances are they're not even good at it. Do not do that. If you've got a great salesperson, leave them in sales. If you've got someone who's great at managing salespeople, that's who you want as the manager of the sales force. Track, measure, and adjust. You constantly have to be tracked, measuring, and adjusting. If you cannot track the progress, track the process of what your employees are doing, the results that they're creating, you can't measure that, and you can't make any adjustments, well, how are you going to get them to doing it? How are you going to get them to execute? How are you going to give them feedback? You've got to give them the information. You've got to do that. Consequences. I see this all the time. You know, someone came to me recently, it was a client of ours, and they said, look, I just can't get this particular person on our team to respond to me. I'm like, well, how long have you been trying to get him to respond to you? He said, for practically a year. I said, great. So what are the consequences for them not getting it to you? Well, you know, I was like, there are none. It's been a year. You know, it's like being in Walmart and that, you know, snotty-nosed kid who's constantly misbehaving, and mom's sitting there going, if you don't behave yourself, I am going to put you in timeout. 3 seconds later, the kid acts up again. If you don't behave yourself, it's like, look, they're idle threats. You've got to have consequences for your employees. Need to know what to do. They need to be trained properly, and there has to be consequences. Communication. You've got to communicate with them all the time of what specifically is expected. You know, we've got a huge team of outsourced professionals that help us run our organization. How do we do that? Do you think we just pick up the phone or send them an email and go, hey, we kind of like you to do something like this. Just go ahead and do it. No. We use, what is it, Screencaster?
Screencast-O-Matic.
Screencast-O-Matic. $15 a year, I think it is.
Yep.
It should be $15,000 a year. Literally, I mean, the stuff, it's unbelievable. Screencast-O-Matic. What you end up doing is you do a short little video for everything that you want done. So if you were sitting here, you're like, look, here's this website, and what I want my website to kind of look like this, and I want you to take this, and I want to put it over here. And you see how like this shade of blue right here? Well, let me click over to a couple other websites. I want it to look more like this blue. It's about giving them very detailed instructions of what you want done. Now, what do you think when people respond back to Dylan? Do you think our projects are on track? Do you think they're close to what we want and need? Absolutely. In the past, we didn't do it, and it was just it was a crapshoot, you know. Especially, it was even me talking with Dylan. Dylan, I'm like, I want this. Now, you've got to be very specific. Communication is key. Second is you can't wait to the end of the week, the end of the quarter, the end of the month, the end of the year to start giving feedback to your team. If they're not executing, you're not getting what you need when you need it, you need to be following up on this on your weekly or daily huddles. You may say, what's a daily huddle? Daily huddle is a 7 to 10 minute stand-up meeting with your team. It's about what's going on, what's most important, what do you commit to getting done by next week or tomorrow, depending on the frequency of these meetings. And then when you get back the following week, this is how it starts. I committed to doing the following. This is the results that I was able to produce, and this is my plan for next week. Guess what? When you've got a team in this room standing up, you also bring to bear peer pressure. As a manager or a leader of the organization, if you have someone constantly not responding to this, not getting to their goals, not doing what they said they were going to do, they're not a good fit. The question is it your fault or their fault? Is it they can't do the job because they haven't been properly trained, or they're in the wrong seat, or are they just not the right person? That's what it comes down to.
Yep, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's really communication and clear expectations. And I think you've told this story before, and you've said it kind of a few times in regards to, I think your boss said it to you or somebody else said this to you. If somebody quits on Friday or they're not coming back on Monday, if you're not sad that they're not coming back, then they're not supposed to be on the team anyways.
Yeah.
So if you can apply that exercise to everybody sitting on your team, in other words, am I happy that everybody's here? And if anybody left, would we be in trouble if they didn't come back on Monday? That's what you need to figure out. And maybe that's an easy exercise to kind of do this week to figure out if there's somebody on your team that you don't need on your team, or if there's people that you need to bring in. Maybe your entire team could leave on Monday and you wouldn't feel that sad about it. So
yeah, and then why? Because the only reason you're not sad about it is because they're not performing to the level that you want them to perform. Once you understand what that level is, many times they don't even understand. The boss has one idea, and the employee has no idea they're not making their expectations. Yeah. If they're not doing it, whose fault is it? It's either theirs or mine. And many times in the past, I found that was mine. I sat there and said, I got to the point where an employee was just not doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I'm like, man, I got to get rid of this employee. And I'm like, I can't get rid of him. I'm like, why? I'm like, because I haven't told them what I expect. And I haven't given them the training that's necessary in order to do their job. Shame on me.
Yeah.
So I ended up keeping employees a lot longer than I should because it was my fault.
Yeah. And I think another way that you can kind of see if there's a communication breakdown is have this person that you're giving expectations repeat back to you what you expect from them.
Yeah.
And I find personally with all the outsourcing and stuff that we've kind of talked about, if I send an email, I'll say, or if I send a Screencast-O-Matic, reply to this email and confirm with a list of the things that I've asked you to do. And so that way I can see very clearly, oh, they got this part of it, but they didn't get this piece. So maybe I wasn't clear. And then that way too, that kind of helps you be able to start to break down any communication errors that you might have on either side. Because sometimes somebody just didn't hear it. Sometimes maybe you thought you said it, but you weren't clear. So that's kind of another quick way that I think it was Shane can maybe utilize and see if it's him or if it's the team is not getting the message clearly.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I taught someone a technique and he used it on me just yesterday or the day before. And that is at the end of an email. If you're writing an email, there's a lot of information. You know, sometimes people don't scroll all the way down. They don't finish it. They just delete it or file or do something. And what that is at the end of the email, there was a call to action. And this particular person wanted to know what street I was born on. Completely, you know, irrelevant to what the email was all about. But he wanted to see if anybody read it. So it went out to 8 of us. And I actually read it. It was a technique that I taught him. And I responded back, and I got a follow-up yesterday. And it said, out of the 8 people I sent this to, only Thor responded back with the question at the end of the email. So that means 7 of you haven't even read it. I was like, ooh, gotcha.
Well, hopefully, Shane, these are some techniques that you can kind of help to use your team execute more. And then at the end of the day, if there's a problem with them and not you or the communication, then I think you have another exercise to figure out who you can get rid of and who you need to bring onto the team to kind of build out the team that you would like to have.
Yeah, if you own a company and you're not implementing the daily huddle, you're missing a big, big opportunity. All right, have a great day.